Hey everybody,
Yep.
I'm Kurt Banner. I'm the CEO here at Portable Church. Also did design for about 15 years, I think. And Corey.
My name's Corey Knuth. I'm the design director at Portable Church, and I've been here for 8 years doing design.
So yeah, we just want to talk a little bit about kind of tech and how that interfaces of what we do at Portable Church. A lot of questions come up, and so we just thought we'd try to address a few of them. And there's a lot of these are very common things that we hear practically every consultation or different interactions at conferences, that kind of thing. So, I'm gonna bring some of these up, and then Corey, just give me your thoughts on it, and I'll jump in too. So, one of them is a church that has a really high production value, and they feel like in portable space that could be a really tough thing. Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it pretty much always comes up. You get a church that has a really high level of production standard at their main campus, and that's a big concern. It's like, how do we realistically do this? And it's always a conversation that we work through. And there are challenges to portability and sometimes limitations. So a lot of my job on a consult is figuring out how to take the meat, the center, the important bits of what makes you at your main campus, and then translate that to portability. Like, how can we do that within the limitations of a portable system? So you're not breaking down your team, trying to do something that's just over the top. And there's a lot of ways that we've, over the years found to give you, as 80% or 90% of the experience of a main installed campus, but fully portable, with the different ways that we can set up how the lifts and the truss work, and pre-wiring and labeling, and making that process simple, but still doing things like LED walls, big line arrays, when that stuff's needed. So
yeah, I feel like it is always tricky because you've been in that building. Most churches have been in that building for 5-10 years, whatever it is. They've acquired a lot of stuff. They have a lot of processes. So we do have to kind of boil it down a little bit and get it to the key message or culture or whatever it may be. But in most cases, yeah, we can still create a really strong experience at a portable environment that really feels like that church. So yeah, obviously, here's another one. Like a lot of these permanent campuses, they may have full-time staff. They may have a full-time video director, sound guy, a lighting person, everything else. And so what do we do for volunteers? How does that work?
Yeah, it's the heartbeat of what we do in a lot of ways is how to figure out how to build something that is sustainable for your team, that's not going to kill them. Like, if you're just burning out your setup and teardown team is really the thing that makes it go. You can't have a service without them in a portable setup. So really protecting them and honoring their time and respecting that, they aren't professionals. They don't do this stuff for a living. They want to help out, and maybe some of them want to really like learn and dig in and that, but trying to build something that is as time efficient as possible, as little just hard work as possible to put it together so that you can do it for years. We have clients that are portable for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years. My own church that I help out at the weekends has been portable for 10 years in various venues. So we try to build something that you can do for that length of time.
Yeah. I think the other thing that we spend a lot of time talking about, that really is, maybe there's one hire at a lot of these portable campuses. Sometimes there's none. Sometimes there's no technical personnel. It's a volunteer all the way through. So there's a lot of attention given to labeling and color coding and organization. That's that's the deal. That's like that's the secret sauce of Portable Church, is like trying to make it so that volunteers or people that just, this guy's a mechanic or that guy works at a bank or whatever, that they can come in and help and be a part of that, but not have to have all those high level skills. So yeah, and we try to make sure that we talk a lot about, like, in many cases, we're trying to get it so that it can be set up in an hour, right? So we don't want this to be like we're going to load it on Saturday night for 4 hours and all that kind of thing. We want to make it so that your volunteers can get in, be a part of it, and still it be a healthy environment where they can, get it done.
And it sometimes cuts counterintuitive to people who have worked in production professionally. It's like we tend to build our designs and systems a little bit differently than that, which isn't always clear why at first, but that's the reason. It's not that we're trying to dumb it down, but we're trying to simplify a little bit. We're trying to build in mind that the people putting this together, it might be teachers, accountants during the week, lawyers, whatever, but they're your production team on the weekends, building something that might be a little simpler, a little different than you're used to in like a touring production environment, because that's not who we're building it for.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. We get pushback on that all the time. You know, I think that world is used to the roadie mentality, and there's a lot of stacking ATA cases and semi trailers and that kind of thing. And there's definitely a place for that, but we just feel like that's probably not the easiest way to engage volunteers on a Sunday. So, you know, our stuff looks weird to a lot of people because it's not industry standard. It's made specifically for the churches that we work with in these situations to make it easy to engage people at all different levels. Yeah. Um, talk a little. So, in keeping in mind with those cases, talk about the strength, the integrity of the cases, the storage system.
Yeah. I mean, they're definitely built to last. Like I said, we have systems that have been, you know, the goal is not to be portable for 20 years, but we have churches that have done it and that cases can hold up and they're pretty repairable. So just because they're built a little differently doesn't mean we're sacrificing in terms of, you know, how they're going to hold up over time. Because obviously we're trying to design a volunteer level system, but it's still load in, load out. Like it's going to take a beating. It's going to need to be able to hold up with that. And the load in, load out's easy. I mean, that's everything is on wheels. That's again, a core principle of our design is you're not carrying anything. You're just pushing cases. For the most part, anyone can help do it. You know, some of them are heavy to load in and out of the trailer, but even the pretty heavy ones, you know, pretty much anyone can help you push them around. We're really trying to make load in, load out as accessible as possible, and but not sacrifice durability, you know, hardiness of the cases to protect the gear. Because I mean, that's the other thing is there's some expensive stuff in there that has to take that beating. So
yeah, I mean, you hate to tell these stories, but I mean, the employees that have been around here for a while always talk about, like, you know, there was this incident 10 years ago where guys were driving there in a snowstorm, you know, and hit black ice and the trailer rolls over and it's crazy. They pull the cases out and I mean, there's almost no damage to anything. I mean, the cases are in good shape. All the gear is in good shape. And that's what we found overwhelmingly is that, I mean, you can use these cases for years, sometimes again, for a decade or more. The stuff's kept in really good shape. It doesn't look conventional. It doesn't look like ATA and that kind of thing, but it absolutely serves its purpose and does well with the way that we pack it in the trailers.
yeah. And more often what we see with the benefit of longevity of the cases isn't just, you know, being in one location, one campus or church portable for that long, but it's, you know, we're portable and that location moves to a building and then we refresh and repurpose that system, those cases into another location, really feeding into like that growth, you know, track. And again, a way that's efficient because your cases, you use them for a few years and then use them again somewhere else, and are able to kind of, you know, expand with the core system following you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Some of our longstanding clients, like you'll go to prep a new campus and this case is on its fourth campus or whatever, you know, I mean, and we've reshelved it and used, you know, it had analog gear in it 10, 15 years ago. And now we're outfitting it with completely new, you know, personal monitors or whatever it may be.
Yep.
So, well, and then, you know, some of it is, you know, people ask about gear and what we're capable of and that kind of thing. And I mean, sky's the limit, really. I mean, we can kind of do anything. I don't know. So talk about that. What about, you know, like what kind of soundboard, what kind of, you know, you talk about LED walls. What are options?
Yeah, it really is the sky's the limit. It's always usually what's happening is we're dreaming big and then we're trying to find the ways to make that more realistic for the team. It's not that you can't do an LED wall. We have churches that do. You know, I'll be commissioning one here in about a month or two for a system. So you can do it. It's just a question of the team support to build it. It takes more time, more effort. So when your team is able to, we're able to from a design standpoint. And we can fly a huge array. We can fly multiple truss lines. We can do all that stuff in portability. It's just a setup time. Those systems might be more like 2 hours as opposed to an hour to set up, stuff like that. And soundboard, again, anything. A lot of soundboards are not built for portability, but there's ways around it. You know, we're deploying a Digico Quantum 225 in a case that'll be fully portable in a couple of months here as well. So we can reach up to that high level of production, you know, excellence, and sometimes there's ways to do that, you know, in a more portable way. It's like we can put Meyer in, but it's point source or something. It really depends on the venue, and a lot of our process is, you finding the challenges of the venue, but also just designing something that's appropriate to the venue, but still hits the mark of what you need. The mixing standards, the standard for your lighting presentation, your video, especially if it's a video venue, and those types of things. So
I think a lot of it is like, if you want to, I mean, we have the occasional client that does these gigantic lighting rigs and that kind of thing. And the biggest difference is we want to pre-wire truss as much as possible. We want to roll stuff in and have it ready to go. There's a trade-off on all that. It takes up trailer space, or it takes up time. How big is your volunteer team? How big is your budget? Like, there's all these variables in play. And sometimes it's like, yeah, we have the team, we have the budget. Okay, let's go for it. And other times, when you're on a consultation, you're having to say, well, maybe we're better served going after this a different way, just because you don't have the volunteer team. Even if you had the money, you've got to have the people to kind of, execute it every week. So there's always these decision points between what makes the most sense in terms of the gear versus your team and your budget.
Almost every consult that I do with a client, I say this. So if anyone's ever done a consult with me or will do, they will hear it most likely. But there's more than one type of cost. And a lot of times the decisions you make, you will pay for one way or another. There's monetary costs. So obviously we're trying to hit a budget, and we can make decisions to bring the budget down to lower the costs or whatever, but you will pay for that in other ways. And it might be the experience in the room. It might be your volunteer team pays for it with their time and effort. And usually that design process is finding the right balance between those three types of costs, between money, time and effort, and experience. And what is the right balance of those three for you in that location, your DNA, your culture, what you're used to. And that can mean pushing the experience down to meet a budget, or pushing the budget up to improve an experience. There's different ways to balance that, but you're always in that tension when you're putting together a system.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to dovetail on that a little bit too, because it's just, I think a lot of times people look at the system and it's expensive, and they are. I mean, it is expensive. It'd be joking not to be, but there's, sometimes I think people are like, well, I could DIY this thing myself. We could figure it out. And I'm often like, hey, I was a TD at a church. I get it. Like, yeah, you probably could. You probably have skilled people that could do that. I mean, I did then, but I have a full-time job, right? Like I've got to execute my service every weekend. I've got to work with my volunteers, whatever it may be, prep a presentation. And so the expense is that trade-off of time. It's exactly what you were just saying. There's always resources somewhere. And so there's a lot of thought that goes into the cases themselves, into the pack, and then just all the labor. I mean, a lot of these systems could take 250 to 600 hours to pull together. It's, I think a lot of people I'll use something like chairs as an easy example. Like they seem simple enough, but when you get 500 chairs in, every one of them is packed individually in a cardboard box, right? And so you're cutting every one of them open, you're getting rid of the packing material, you're loading it into the cart. By the time you get done, you have a mountain of garbage that you have to deal with. And it's that kind of stuff that they're just not thinking about when they get it themselves. And so there's a lot of stuff that goes into pulling these systems together, just beyond the actual gear. And that contributes to some of that expense. Latest and greatest tech. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, what are we doing to stay current? Like, I feel like that is something we're always at. I mean, we do a design meeting every week, and we're always kind of asking ourselves, are we on the edge? Do we need to do something else? Where do you feel like we're at on that?
Yeah. It's a huge heart, that I've had it since I really started here, but especially in the last few years of just like trying to push the envelope for portability for production in general. And technology has changed a lot. I mean, when I first started, networked video was not a thing that you would really want to mess with too much. It was generally more headaches than it was worth. And nowadays, with some of the newer products that have come out at really good price points, we're doing networked video all the time, which is just shrinking your connections, keeping IO simpler, keeping snakes smaller and more cost effective. So, utilizing network technology is a huge jump. And obviously LED technology costs have plummeted. So like we're able to utilize that much more within, realistic portable budgets. So, and there's more ways. The one that is top of my mind right now is cases, is just like revamping cases, new ideas for cases, kind of like stuff that we've never seen before. Like how can we, because we have the capability to build any case we want. So like what does that look like, the next generation of portable cases? And we have some stuff cooking for that right now, of like just how to create something that's really cool, but again, cost effective, because custom cases can be pricey. So we want to be able to do that and bring that in, but make it also a reasonable cost, that's going to fit in.
That's one of my favorite things, actually, is, I mean, because we have a manufacturing division, we make all of our own cases. And like, I was working with a client yesterday that's got a totally different, unique idea. And we're like, okay, how do we pull this together? And it's very different, the layout they want to do and everything else. But the guys in the shop are, Brandon, our designer, and everybody, Tim, that works on design as well, they came up with a concept and we, proofed it all out and timeline, and yeah. So it's kind of like whenever we encounter new obstacles or possibilities, things like that, having the case manufacturing division is kind of one of those really lovely things about working here, is that we can almost always find a way to get it into a case, or make it easy to use for a volunteer. I think, on the technology thing too, the other thing I was going to say is it's tricky too, right? Because we're always, again, you're working with volunteers, so it's not like you've got that rock star engineer guy, and so sometimes at a big church, like, we would get scrappy and we would try things, and we could do that because there was somebody like me, or there was 3 or 4 other guys, and they could step in and kind of make it work. And there's a balance to new technology. We love it, and we do a lot of demos and see what's out there. But you also have to be careful that it's something that's really super reliable and reproducible, and that a team of volunteers that can use it. So that's something we always have to kind of keep up.
Yep. For sure.
Talk a little bit about talk about how a consultation works and getting a client to getting a system where, it kind of aligns with what they have in mind.
Yeah. It starts off with me just gathering a lot of information. We generally spend, several hours in meetings, and we tour the venue and just figure out the dream. Like, what do we want this to look like? What could it look like? What kind of boundaries does the venue place around that, and then building within that. And I think there's sometimes you'll work with an AV company, and there's a sense of here's what I want, and then they just give you whatever they think you need, and that is very much not my process and goal. I very much view it as collaborative, in the sense of you tell me what you want to do, and then I can hopefully bring in some expertise, some just experience of I've seen that work really well doing it this way, or I've seen that fail miserably, and just offer that and try and guide and fill in the details and make sure that things going to be functional. But like I said, collaborative. I want to kind of make decisions together on how to balance that tension between costs and volunteer and experience that we talked about. So yeah, it's very much what do we think of this, and dreaming together, and then kind of narrowing that in and figuring out the best ways to hit those marks that we need to.
Yeah, it's a lot. Just coming off of a consultation last week, dream is always really big. And it's rare that I've ever gone and the dream matched the budget. They rarely ever do. But yeah, it's a lot of talking through that, and then figuring out really what makes sense for them and getting it down to whatever that needs to be. And I don't know, the consultation for me is a lot of fun. I agree with you. When I was at a church, we would have an integrator come in, or we would have a company that was trying to pitch us on a product. And a lot of times you didn't really understand the why of, why is this the greatest thing ever? And I feel like that's one of the biggest things that is important to us, is we really want you to understand why we're making the decision. This may be a little bit more, this may be a little bit easier to use, or, this might be a better choice for portability. Sometimes we have to look at a lot of different factors. So yeah, there's a lot to determine in terms of, but it's really, we really don't go to any of these systems thinking, here's how I want to do it. It's really, how do you want to do it? And we'll figure out how to wrap that system around it. So, some people, the other thing is, let's say, is some people have gear, they're moving out of a building, or they know a guy, everybody knows a guy. What's different ways that we kind of deal with that when those situations come?
Yeah, absolutely. Within what we were talking about before, it's advice and experience that we can hopefully bring to the table. I always try to, when I've seen that, but within, however we're able to, we're willing to, and all the time work within those types of parameters. If you know a guy who's going to give you a great deal on something, if we can't match that price, we are totally willing to work with, if you want to buy that gear separately, bring it to the table and have us integrate it into the system, we can do that. And hopefully in a way that's, again, going to meet the goal, sustainability, within budget things. So we can work within that and build it out. And sometimes it's like you said, leaving a building and you've got a pile of gear and we just need to make it portable. We do that all the time too. Okay, let's take your soundboard and wire it into a rack, make it a portable mixing rack as needed. And sometimes it's refreshing a system. Sometimes it's we talked about earlier, you already have a portable system. We're going to redeploy this, and it's refreshing. I've done that, many times, where you show up and you kind of catalog the gear, do a new venue, new plan, and then refresh that system into a new one. So we try to be as flexible as we can in the build out, because we understand, like, if you're going to get a huge break on your cost from someone, that's a huge benefit, because it means, like, you saved on tech and we can reallocate that money to kids or something else in the experience, or even to something else that you need in your budget, marketing or first year staffing or whatever that is. So we want to be as flexible as we can, but also, as I mentioned, expertise. Sometimes it's, we want to use this thing and that's a bad idea. So when I see that, it's ultimately still the client's decision, if they want to do that. But I'm at least going to just raise the flag and say, like, man, I don't know. Here's the possible consequences of that choice and the ripple effects. Because sometimes it's like, you just don't see the ripples. You're like, oh, let's do this. And that thing affects your storage and your build out, your connections and your setup time massively. And hopefully being able to point those things out within that.
Yeah, it's funny, when we were working on a project here, and I was telling a couple people, the reality of it is that we've done so many things so many different ways, and we've seen things do great and we've seen failures, and made mistakes and that kind of thing. And I'm like, I think a lot of times, especially if it's a multi-site, for example, that's doing their first campus, there's so much about that first, that first campus, they really wanted to, it's like your first kid. Like, you pour so much attention and time and everything you got into that, and it's got to look just like the main campus. And a lot of times they'll make decisions where you're like, oh, this is going to hurt later on. Like, I understand why, but we've seen it enough times where we're like, just try to trust us a little bit. Like, it's going to be okay. You don't have to go to these great extremes, Yeah. So when we sit down and, part of the deal is when we sit down and talk, well, with really any team, but with the tech team, we've got a list of stuff, and it's, it's, some of it's pretty obvious, right? Like, what's your soundboard? What's your, what kind of wireless mics do you like? Do you have preferences in terms of, are we going to do wired ears or wireless ears, or and a lot of it's budget, right? So we're having to, the dream is always big. We're always kind of like, okay, let's get it down. Inevitably, we often start off with a lot of stuff and the best of stuff. And, like for this particular system, we were doing a Behringer wing and, some kind of mid-level Shure wireless mics and, some PSM 300 ears. It's got a drum mic package. It's got Ableton. It's got Pro Presenter. It's got a video switcher. Like, so you're kind of just working your way down the list, and the project, how do we want to do projection? And in this particular instance, it was not a huge stage. So we're doing like a 10,000 lumen projector with a really short, one of those mirror lenses that are a fortune, but allow you to do this gigantic screen at 4 feet or whatever it is. And even in the revision process, as we're going through it, we start to ask ourselves, is it worth it? Like, do we want that? Like, already the church is saying, do we want to do 2 side screens and have it out front instead of in back? And I'm like, yeah, that might be a valid option and might be even cheaper and better. But, you're also giving up, like with that center screen, it sort of becomes your lighting in a way. It becomes your stage presence and everything else. So we're always, okay, is that good or bad? And maybe that means we have to spend a little bit more time and attention on lighting. And we hadn't built a huge lighting system. So now maybe we have to, pump that up a little bit. So there's kind of a checklist, and you're marching your way through it. And we want to get as much preference as possible. And we talk about that a little bit. Like, some things are like, I would push you to go this way unless you feel really strongly about it. Because of our experience, we find that this particular piece of gear or whatever it may be is probably the best choice for portability. But again, if you feel very strongly about it, one thing that comes to mind in this particular venue is, like, they really want acoustic drums. And I'm like, and we'll figure out how to do it, right? But there are some venues where electric drums are probably the right choice, because it is just so hard to contain the drummer, and especially if they're an aggressive player, that kind of thing. Yeah. So there's, in the end, if they feel really strongly about it, we'll figure it out. But that may come at a cost. Again, you talked about it earlier, of time. Like, how much time does it take to set up some kind of a containment, and cover it and everything else, versus if we just put a set of electric drums down and now we're done. And it's very easy to control the volume. So there's just a lot of choices that have to be made in terms of how it all fits together and what the right choices are for that system. So yeah, talk about a different one.
There was kind of a couple that came to mind. You talked about the lighting, which is obviously a huge one, and it goes with, sometimes the venue that you're going into has limitations that you're working around, and sometimes it has big benefits. So there's, a recent system, and this is common and we're always looking for it, but where it's an auditorium where the school is giving them the opportunity to use the existing lighting that's in there. So you have kind of built-in subject lighting that's in the proper position and just great. And you don't have to set it up. You just plug into it and run it. So it's a huge benefit to have those types of things. And it's also a venue where the school is willing to let them potentially install some stuff of their own. We often see schools and relationships with churches where the church is willing to like donate some installed gear upgrades to the school, utilize them, and then they remain there, which is a huge benefit to the school and a huge benefit to the church because it saves you so much time, and it elevates your experience so much to hang a line array versus having it on the ground. So, and this church was able to install an LED wall into the venue, which
That's cool.
With the way the costs have changed is comparable to the cost of a projector and screen, but just a way higher level experience. But you don't have that burden of the setup of piecing together an LED wall, from just parts. So that was a huge benefit. And then I think of another one where, it was, I know a guy and he's hooking me up on the price, and it's, we'll work with that. And we're able to price match everything with that and supply not just gear for the main system, but for the main campus as well, and get them that stuff at that price, but still maintain like that portable, just the goals that we're going for, like having a system that's very well put together, thought out, from the beginning, from the ground up, and is going to work well in portability. So yeah. And then I think of like, there's always like the big fun ones where the budget's a little higher, and it's like we are doing the LED wall, the 16-foot flown wall, and the L-acoustic AFINs and the Digico board, and all that stuff. So it's always fun to be able to, reach for those things when they come up. But like you said, oftentimes you're kind of starting there and then strategically, carefully, like prioritizing. I always think of it like prioritizing, like you are cutting, but really you're prioritizing. You're saying, I need this. Absolutely. It must be this. And this one, that's a little negotiable, the exact speakers that it is, we can kind of like make some choices there. So it's a very like thoughtful process often.
I feel like the venue, I mean, like whether, if you're in a performing arts center versus a gym or a cafeteria, that kind of thing, I mean, that immediately opens you to opportunities that you don't have otherwise, right? You're going to, like, if you're budget constrained and you got to go into a gym, you're going to burn so much time, money, space, everything on just stage deck, and it's like, but you got to have it. Yeah. And chairs. Exactly. I mean, it's like the one I just did. It's like, yeah, we spent a ton of money on chairs, it's like, well, I mean, you got to have them. I mean, that's part of the deal, but it's, if you're going into a performing arts center, it's like, we can really maximize the money in some ways because a lot of the barriers are already eliminated. It does. Yeah. That has a lot to do with the budget and choices too. I think it's the relationship. There's, when we go out to do a consultation or as we do the design, often there's multiple players in the mix. So there's, sometimes it's a campus pastor, sometimes it's an executive pastor, sometimes it's a technical person. There's a lot of roles and relationships going on. Ultimately, usually there's one person that's, the point person that's kind of who our main contact is, that kind of thing. But it is tricky. You're often trying to balance this relationship between different people and what's important. And a lot of times you've got an XP that, I mean, they get, occasionally you get one that really doesn't understand tech, but for the most part, they're not. That's not their thing. That's not why they're on the team. So to a degree, we have to work with the TD, a production director, that kind of thing, to figure out what's important. And then sometimes we have to educate the EXP. Sometimes we have to sort of help the tech director come to terms with how the rest of the package fits together. There's always this bit of negotiating and relationship. And I mean, that's a gigantic part of what we do, what the project manager does as well, is to try to help everybody understand how their part works, but also how it fits into a bigger system and everything else going together.
Yeah, it's odd because you never want to be in a situation where you end up like caught in the middle, or you are, somehow a problem within that relationship, because the reality is, that's already a relationship. I always view it as like, my role is firstly to just build some connection and trust with all parties, like, and just hopefully get where we're all on the same page, pushing in the same direction, and then be able to just leverage, again, experience, expertise, like, and help make those decisions between, the church's staff, whatever players might be involved. But one of the weird oddities of my job is just that I have to be able to think and communicate at both a granular technical level and an organizational, vision level, and kind of bridge that gap with a design. So, sometimes you're helping one side or the other just like think through something, make decisions, offering advice, suggestions. Sometimes it's like, man, we got to hit this budget, but how can we do that and maintain the experience at this level?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, we could do this. We could, leverage this. And where it's like, it is a downgrade, but it's not as much of a downgrade in experience as it could be. You're trying to like help find that balance and be just hopefully a partner with both parties. And again, you never want to be a wedge or caught in the middle. I always want to, kind of be a guest staff member, for the design. Whenever I'm on a system design engaging with a production lead or tech director, I'm always like, I still love doing production. Like it's part of what really sustains you in a job like this, is that like I still love mixing. I still love playing in a band, like doing what we do. So I want to like kind of get in that mode with them and just dream, and like I can see that the goal, the end result that they want. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm seeing that with you, and hopefully able to like whatever we got to do to get there. I want to be able to hit the dream, the goals, hit that production, that sweet moment, like give you the tools you need to create those experiences in your service and have some fun while doing it. Cause I still have a ton of fun doing production. So, yeah, that's my goal, is to just kind of be a partner and kind of not have to compromise. I mean, that's, sometimes you do it strategically, but like if you have this grand, amazing thing that you want to pull off, like let's figure out how to do it portably, is really what I'm hoping for, when we're going through a design process. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same way. I mean, all of us that are designers, I mean, not surprisingly, we all kind of have our specialty, right? Like we've come up a certain way. Like Corey came up doing a lot of audio. I was a video guy for years, and I still gig. I still do. I was just working with a church recently. I still do side projects as well. And so it's fun. It's a big part of who I am. Even though I have this role, I still love the live experience. I love the energy. I'm really into that. My thing very much is like, I've been in your shoes. Like I've been that TD. What do you want to accomplish? What are you looking to do? And obviously I may have more experience. I may have less experience, that kind of thing. Together, we can figure out what kind of makes sense. And we don't push any lines. We don't do, we're not trying, oh, really got to sell you this. We don't care. We'll sell you whatever makes the most sense for you guys. And if you have something in mind in particular, we'll figure out how to make it work. But we do, we are trying to apply what we know about portability and health and livelihood and everything else about, getting in and out and getting that built in a way that's sustainable and not just going to kill your team and that kind of thing, which is it's a big part of it. But yeah, we want to achieve the same thing you do. We want to do, and we're all techs, and we could sit around and have tech nerd talk and, talk about gear and all that kind of stuff too. That's a fun thing for us as well. So it's like, just tell us, work with us. Just what do you want to accomplish? And we're going to figure out how to make it work. Cause we want the same thing. We really do.
Yeah. And from the very beginning for me, it's always been, I know it's like, I don't even know if it makes sense to like label it this, but I try to bring a version of like an empathetic design. Yeah. I don't know. Like when I'm putting together a video rack for your team, I'm imagining myself in that seat, running it. Like if I had to, operate this thing, what would I want? Like what kind of experience would I want it to be for the operator, for the person who has to set it up? And I'm trying to bring that in of just like, all the gigs I've done in my life that were terrible and avoid that and try to build it out to be something that I would love to use, and everything that I put together for you, again, with that input of like, this is what we need. We need to do camera switching. We need to do a Resi live stream. We need to do Pro Presenter or media server, whatever it is. But then how can I make that something that is going to be a great experience for the user? And I also think about, like you said, the TD, like we were techs, we were all TDs in a past version of ourselves, and know what that's like, and leading the team and leading the room and leading the technical experience and trying to build designs with that in mind too, of like, all right, if I had to manage and operate this system as a tech lead, like what would I want to see, and those types of things.
So, so if you're a tech or, a production director, that kind of thing, and, you're thinking, how do we do this? How do I start this conversation? That kind of thing. I would say give us a call. You're gonna get connected with one of our account reps. If you want to talk tech, want to figure out how that fits, we understand like a lot of the production tech people out there have really influential voices, but maybe you're not the person that's, you know, the main contact or that kind of thing. That's okay. We can have a conversation. We're available. They'll connect you with somebody. We're happy to have those conversations ahead of time and figure out, you know, what makes sense. And lead you, you know, if it makes sense to start a conversation, to have a consultation, build a design system with you guys, you know, we can kind of get that going in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, we're happy to be a resource for you and figure out what next steps might be to getting a system together for you. If you call in there, you know, even our account reps know quite a bit to get you rolling and figure out kind of next steps. And they can kind of connect the dots between different team members, you know, whether it be an executive pastor or your lead pastor, or whoever's making that initial contact. And yeah, then we need to kind of start to have some conversations, figure out what makes sense. Maybe it's a consultation, and yeah, we can get the ball rolling and figure out how to build a system for you.